How good is the start?
It's a good start.
It's a great start.
Yeah, it's the first win.
And why do we play?
You play to win the game.
And what do we want?
I want winners.
I'm not bipartisan. I'm not bipolar. I'm not Biden.
I'm by winning. I win here and I win there.
It took us getting to week 2 of the college football season, but now we're getting a read on just how much college football programs have spent on their 2025 rosters. And going back to last May, we had Brett Bielema and Kurt Signetti claiming that there were folks out there spending close to $40 million on their roster. Even earlier this week, Mike Gundy claimed that Dan Lanning spent $40 million on his roster, to which Dan Lanning says, no, but we spend to win. And other people save to have an excuse for why they don't. And I think he's got a point there. But getting close to the number has been really fascinating to watch in the age of revenue sharing. As many of you understand, we're entering a moment when college football players, college athletes are getting paid to play the sport that they have been recruited on scholarship to play while getting to keep the scholarship. Under the House versus NCAA settlement, schools have to share up to $20.5 million of their revenue with their student athletes across the board. We come to understand that $13 million of that dollars of that money, give or take, is going to the football program, which will soon be capped at 105 scholarship players. They also use that money to pay for the scholarships for their athletes. That does not preclude name, image, and likeness from coming into it. But as you probably are aware, teams with the best odds at places like BetOnline to win the national championship usually spend the most money. And those that are spending more that don't have the best odds to win the national championship expect to be better than they ever have in years past, which is why you can come to understand there are certain schools that are willing to pay the number, and there are certain schools that are not. One of them is in a state of Ohio. One of them is the state of Texas, and there's a lot in between. So this really great work by Pete Nakos at On3. Nobody's spending $40 million on their roster. It's a myth. It's not a thing. It's really not. Steve Sarkisian shot it down, said it was irresponsible reporting. I'm like, yeah, okay. What's irresponsible is you not being able to punch it in at the goal line against Ohio State. But I digress, okay? Ohio State is closest. They spent north of $35 million on their roster, according to On3, which is $15 million more than they reportedly had spent last year. But you factor in revenue share, about $13 million. That's only about $2 million more than they would have spent last year. So it's really not that much. You could even make an argument that that is the price of living in this age of college football, when everybody understands that the best way to put a competitive football team on the field is to have a roster that costs a lot of money. But again, you still got to play the games. You still got to coach them. And even Ohio State could be this close to not winning the national championship. Remember, they lost to Oregon. Then they lost to Michigan. They didn't make the Big Ten championship game. And they had to fight their way through the bracket after they got the home field game against Tennessee. And that's exactly what they did. They went up the rough side of the mountain. Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, Notre Dame, national championship. Behind Ohio State is when I think it starts to get a little bit more interesting. Texas Tech has spent north of $28 million on its roster, which is a team that is really trying to make the playoff and win the Big 12 championship. But it's also a program that doesn't have any pedigree of even being as good as Iowa State. Realize that Iowa State has won more football games than any other Big 12 team since 2023 and has an 11-win season in there. Okay? They've also got a 3-year starter in Rocco Beck, who I expect to be a 3,000-yard passer again. Texas Tech hasn't won more than 9 games in a season since 2009, okay? They have to overcome a lot, and they've never won a Big 12 championship. They're expecting that to change this year, but they've already had an injury to Quentin Joyner, and they've already had a significant injury to Baron Morton, and all they did was play Arkansas Pine Bluff last week. They still got a whole-ass Big 12 schedule to play. Then you get into where I think is kind of interesting with the College Sports Commission releasing figures today. They approved a ton of deals in the last 7 weeks, and the numbers are rather impressive. So the College Sports Commission, that has come to basically supersede the NCAA and as far as the governing body that we look for, in particular for football, approved $79.8 million in NIL deals. That's over 8,300 deals. Only one of those deals was worth more than $1.6 million. That means, though, that $80 million, give or take, no, not give or take, little less than $80 million over 7 weeks was spent on student athletes. Wild number, right? Now, according to On3, between 15 and 20 college football programs hit the $20 million threshold for their rosters this year. That is 15 to 20 up from 1 last year that we know of. 2, we think, right? Oregon and Ohio State. We think Oregon outspent Ohio State by about $3 million, but negligible in as far as how much of a benefit it gave them, because those two teams split the difference. One won one game, one won the other. One won the one that counted, right? Going away. I also look at this and say, okay, who else thought that they need to raise their game? Well, among these 15 to 20, you have Ole Miss that didn't make the playoff last year, South Carolina that didn't make the playoff last year, A&M that didn't make the playoff last year, Notre Dame, which made the playoff last year, also spent about $19 million. And then you have the rest of the Power Four just under $20 million, basically scrapping together what they can to provide the bare minimum for their rev share. An example of this would be Illinois, who went 10-3 last year. So you can be competitive and good, but again, are you going to make the playoff, right? I think as we get closer to what these things are going to be, it's also important to note that Texas A&M, Texas Tech will probably be on the heels of Ohio State to eclipse $40 million next year in what they spend on the football roster. And we don't think that number is going to go down. It's one other reason why I genuinely believe that we will see an expansion to the playoff very soon, because everybody needs the extra revenue. And the only way to get extra revenue of the kind that they need is to play more football and create more inventory. You can put together a scheduling agreement that forces the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12 to play each other and to get rid of all these crappy non-conference games that we don't like, say Oklahoma, Illinois State, to pick on my team, and fill that with Oklahoma versus USC. To get rid of LSU versus Louisiana Tech and to fill that with Louisiana versus Oregon. Make an NFL-style schedule, expand the playoff to where you can get at least 16 teams in, if not 24 teams in, and make these teams play each other. And I don't want to hear any more crap about how hard this is for the players and how much football they're playing. Realize that every single one of the 136 FBS programs has at least one graduate on its roster right now. 121 of the 136 have at least 2 graduates on their roster right now. There are records that are being set and broken year after year for GPAs going up. Why? Because we're paying kids for good grades, because it turns out, just like the rest of us, the best incentive for honorable and good action is money. That's what this is about. You don't go to college to get an education. You go to college to get a job. And once you have a job, your job is to keep it. That's what it is. And 3 things get you jobs. Be on time. Be good at your job. Have people like you. You only need 2 of the 3. If you're good at your job and people like you, you ain't got to be on time. You show up whenever the hell you want. The bus ain't going to leave without you, right? The Vince Young rule. Or you can be on time, have people like you, and not be good at your job. You know, like the backup quarterback. They can't be trusted to go win your football game, but everybody likes that guy. You're willing to pay for these things. What I think gets into the craw of so many of you is it ain't you getting paid. I get it. I understand. You had to come up the hard way. You went to school in the snow, uphill both ways. Me too. Okay? I missed out on the revenue share from the House versus NCAA. So did a million other people. But you play the hand you dealt. And that's what the money is about now. It ain't about how much a kid is getting paid or not getting paid. It is about a place at the poker table. Some of you are familiar with the World Series of Poker. Not only are you familiar that you have to play your way in, you also have the stake that you have to present to get in. That is your buy-in. That gets you to the table. Once they deal out the cards, it's up to what you get and how you play them. What I am beginning to understand more and more is that there are a bunch of people that believe that they should have the opportunity to win because they got a place at the table, they got the buy-in. And there are more people that ain't got the buy-in that think if I'm going to have a chance, you're going to have to lower the buy-in. Neither one of those things is going to happen. Either you're going to raise the stake and you're going to bet to win, or take your ass down there to play some backgammon. Okay? Go hit the slots. We don't do that around here. We're playing poker. We're playing to win. We're playing for keeps. Either put your Rolls Royce on the table or get to stepping. I'm tired of this. We're playing big boy football now. Big boy football costs big boy money. If you ain't got big boy football money, you don't get to play big boy football.